We will have the conversations that few are prepared to have, and more importantly, conversations centered on rationality. Subscribe now to listen to Rational Voices with Sunil. Richie, thanks for joining. Amazing to have you on here. What have you been up to?
Well, I've been up to a lot actually in the last few months, especially because I've been quite busy caring for my mum full time. Prior to that, of course, I was on GB News a lot and Talk TV as a political commentator. My background really is I was an ex-convict and went through rehabilitation back in 1993. I'm 50, would you believe it? So I'm getting on a bit now. And of course, you know, having been involved in politics, which is something my dad always said. He said, Rich, never get involved in religion or politics. And I got involved with both, right? So that's a long story. I should have listened to him, really. Involved with the Brexit Party when they've stood for the Brexit vote. I stood as an MP in Blaenau Gwent, which is in the South Wales Valleys here. Run a fantastic campaign, had a great team. We came second, beating the Conservatives, which was great for me, especially in Wales. But unfortunately, you put a red rosette on a donkey in Wales and they still vote for Labour. It's the old thing, you know, vote Labour. But that was an experience. Got to meet people like Nigel Farage, Richard Tice, and Ben Habib, Rupert Lowe, all these kind of guys, and had a wonderful time, really. And just because I've not come from Cambridge University, I'm literally from the streets. You know, I lived on the streets. I was an addict. I was in prison. You know, all that kind of stuff in my teenage years, and as I got older, so I kind of went to rehab. And that kind of helped me find faith, and that faith enabled me to give me the strength to overcome some of those demons that I was fighting from my traumatic childhood. So as a result of that, then I began to look at helping other people. So I worked as the director of a rehabilitation centre myself, helping countless numbers of young men and women rebuild their lives, because I think it's essential once we've received the help ourselves to give something back. And so we did that, and we had about a 75% success rate in that, seeing people turn their lives around from heroin addictions to all kinds of things, you know, dark things, and then becoming, you know, members of society, if you like, getting married, getting jobs, and some starting businesses very successfully. And so that gives me great satisfaction to see. But then I was looking at the kind of the way things were in our country, and I was concerned. I wasn't really into politics. To be honest with you, I hated politicians, because I thought all politicians just lied, right? Yeah. Especially Keir Starmer, he's full of them. But anyway, we might come to that later. But I seen an opportunity during the whole Brexit vote when 17.5 million of us voted to leave the EU. I don't believe that got accomplished. We didn't get a full Brexit in the end, not what I voted for, certainly. But I met Nigel Farage at an event in Merthyr Tydfil in Wales. For your viewers, that's in Wales, because I know it's very Welshy, and I'm very Welshy, so I will try to speak slow because I speak fast, right? So forgive me. And after meeting him, I was impressed by some of the things he had to say, particularly on immigration and the impact it's had on our country, and the impact it's had on our values and our history, and the lack of integration, really, that multiculturalism has brought to our country, or lack of it, I should say. And as a result of that, I saw the fabric of our nation changing. I got concerned about my children. I have 5 children with my ex-wife, and I seen some of the things they wanted to teach the children in school, in the RSE curriculum here in Wales, which was to me quite perverse and quite deplorable, to be honest, teaching children about masturbation at a young age, you know, having all kinds of weird interpretations of sexuality and, you know, gender ideologies and things like that. You can be so many genders. And I started to get concerned about that. And I even, you know, my kids are older now, but had it been the case then, I think I would have homeschooled them. And I think there are more and more people in the country, sensible people, in my opinion, if they're in schools where that stuff is being taught, they're turning to alternatives like homeschooling, because, you know, the Catholic Church used to say, you give me a child from the age of 0 till 7, and whatever we input into them, that's what they'll become when they're older. Train up a child in the way he shall go, and when he's older, he shall not depart from it, is the word that's used in Scripture. So I seen all these things, and I thought, and I used to shout the questions. I was one of those who sat on the sofa on a Thursday night and shouted at question time, right? Fiona Bruce and the one before her. And like, oh, that ain't right. And I thought, you know what, Rich? Instead of shouting, shut your mouth, do something about it and get involved. And that's my route into politics. So I thought, you know what? I need to do something. I need to stand up for what I believe is right, the values that I believe right for us as a country, and for my children and the future generations that are to come. And so that's my route into politics. So it comes from a place of from knowing and understanding what it means to be working class, living on the streets, being broken, caught in addiction, life of crime, then turning all that around and using that then as a platform really to say to people, hey, listen, there is another way of doing life, but also getting politicians to listen to people like us, because we are people. You cut us, we bleed the same, and that was important, getting our voices here, because they don't get heard. It's the whole benefit system. You rely on benefits, we give them to you, and that's it. You'll do as you're told, and we'll give you, taxpayers' money. You just vote for us. That's Labour. That's certainly down here in Wales. And I wanted to make a difference. And I've seen the decline of what's happening in Wales with the Welsh Parliament here, the Welsh Senedd, with Labour after 25 years of devolution. Things have just got worse. We have the highest levels of child poverty here in Wales, in the whole of the United Kingdom. Our education at the PISA list, which is the measurement board, they measure maths, English and science, where people sit in it. Wales is at the lowest bottom end of that.
Wow.
And when you look at it, I mean, I know I've talked a lot and I'm letting you interject, but I do speak quite a lot here. So you have to forgive me.
It's good to get the general oversight to what you've been doing. I think what'd be interesting to start with is the work you did in terms of the reforming prisoners and addicts and stuff, because I think it's a big criticism in the UK in general that we did a really bad job of people who repeat offenders, basically. How did you come up with this plan, and why did you decide to do it?
Yeah, well, it was the same rehabilitation centre that helped me, actually. So I moved when I was studying in Birmingham, where I met my ex-wife at the time, who was a wonderful person, by the way, still is, good friends, with my kids. I met her there. I then moved back to Wales to take over as the director of Victory Outreach UK, which was amazing, really, because it was the place that I found the help that I needed. So I knew the intricacy workings and how to help people. So we had a structured program. So they'd sign, forms to consent that they'll work 9 till 5. So it was a strict regime. So we got people into like work programs, off-site and on-site. So we taught them skills, got them into college. They were supervised 24/7. It was very Christian-based. So it was the values of Christianity were placed there. Thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not do this, that, all that kind of stuff. And they didn't have to become Christians to be there. That was the thing. It wasn't like when you go out and convert people. We weren't on a mission to convert people. It was just that we believed that, if we're Christians, we believe in forgiveness, we believe in second chances, we believe in redemption, and we believe in all those things and giving people those chances. So the program was based on each individual, with a whole host of staff that were under me. I think we had about 25, 30 staff at the time. We had 4 homes. One was a hotel that we used, and there were 3 other properties as well. They were separate for girls and guys. And it was a 12-month program. And then we looked on then settling them back into the community. So we'd support them with floating support, which is important. We see many people leave rehab or prison, no support whatsoever. The system currently, as it is, fails people. You come out of prison, they don't give you accommodation. It's very likely you're going to get a job, especially because of your criminal record, right? So you've got no chance of really making it. You're thrown to the wolves immediately. You're back in the same cycle, same area, same people. And before you know it, you reoffend. So the reoffending rate in this country is massive, for a simple reason: they have no resettlement program. So we were the resettlement program. So they come out of prison, or the streets, but mainly from jails, into Victory Outreach, which was the rehabilitation centre, work through our program. Very strict it was. We were accused of being called cults and slave labour and all that kind of stuff. We weren't. We were just really strict with them, because addicts need routine. They need discipline. They don't understand. You've got to get up in the morning to go to work. You've got to be up. You've got to brush your teeth. These are basic principles that we all accept and know, brought up in, normal families, but they don't know this. So all of that goes into it. And then, of course, we look then at getting them jobs, or back into education, whether that be college or later on university. We'd support that as well. We've brought in support, and we would help countless numbers of people, many of whom had been really well. Some I'm still in touch with, many, many years on. And it's a great delight and joy to see what they're doing. And to think that we were able to play, my team and I, to play a part in it was incredible. And I look back with great fondness of those times, yeah.
I think there's a real people undersell the importance of routine and schedule. I think it's even just for normal human beings.
I think one of the, obviously people do suffer mental health issues, but sometimes I think they're more mental well-being issues than actual health and, routine and schedule. I think for everyone it's so important. And I know it's hard, or a lot of people now are just, especially with phones and all this sort of stuff, they can easily get out of routine and schedule. I know for myself, if I don't stick to some sort of routine or schedule, you kind of feel a bit lost, and that's even if it's a day or two. Then, so I think was that a big part in terms of seeing the transformation amongst people, creating that routine and schedule?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we all need some kind of routine, you know. I think it's important for mental health and well-being. I mean, I speak to a lot of young people, and have helped lots of young people. And with the modern age that we live in, with all the kind of technology that we have thrown at us, I mean, fortunately for me, I didn't grow up with mobile phones. We had to go to a phone box, right? You know, with 10 pence and stuff like that, or we had to ring a number like this. And 999 was the worst one because it was the last number on the ring dial, you know? So it was a bit different for us when we were younger. But this generation, I mean, they have access to so many things, so many distractions, and some of the things are not good. I know Parliament have passed certain bills on online safety harms and things like that, but I don't think it's going to be enough. I think if children want to access, or young people want to access certain things, they can. Media, technology is being used to groom young children as well. We've seen this. You know, it's been exposed. All kinds of things that happen. We see on Facebook, these kind of vigilantes going out there and catching people who are actively looking to have sex with underage children, which is paedophilia, by the way, which is not the mental illness, which some will have us believe, or trying to put into the plus on the LGBTQ bit. But anyway, that's just my opinion.
I totally agree, and I don't want to go down this rabbit hole, but I think a lot of the LGBTQ plus stuff in the last maybe 4, 5, 10 years, I honestly think it's almost trying to normalize pedophilia. I feel like that's like the next step, and I think it's gone away from just basic gay rights for gay people and it's elevated into something. And I can't help but think that like the next step for this group is to try and normalize pedophilia. I think you're spot on there.
Yeah, I think the whole lesbian, gay, and bi thing. I've got no issue with. I got friends who are gay, and they're brilliant. They're great. They're fantastic. I've even been to gay clubs with them. In London. And it's out of my comfort zone. Don't get me wrong, right? It's not my kind of scene, but they're friends. And you love your friends. But when if you see this transgender kind of cult that's developed, where now young people are so confused at a young age when they're being taught in our education system that they can pick and choose what they want to be, male or female. Now, there are two biological sexes. You're either male or you're female. There's no in between. Now, some people might have confusion over that because of influences in their home life, maybe because of educationally they've been indoctrinated with certain ways of thinking by woke, left, progressive teachers.
Yep.
And as a result, as you know, that happens. And so they question their identity. But, for me, it is moving away from how we were created. We were created in the image of God, male and female, right? So that's where I stand. It troubles me because young people's mental health is being battered as it is, but it's only going to get worse as they hear more of this stuff coming out. And so for me, we need to use our voices, use our podcasts like yours, and across all social media, as you're doing very, very successfully as well, which I'm pleased to be on your show, by the way.
Thank you.
It's important that we get it out there so they have an alternative. Like we just launched the TikTok channel, literally, and I'm 50, right? What do I know about TikTok, right? And it's mental. I mean, I put a video on the other day. It got 19,000 views. I don't even know what I said. I mean, I'm just looking back at it. I think it was to do with the grooming gangs or something like that. But You realize that young people are engaging with these social media platforms, and we need it because if we've got something we feel is repugnant, morally wrong, and they've been warped into some way of thinking, then we have to counterbalance that. We have to give them the other side of the story so they can say, hey, listen, it's not about this. You've got this as well. And so I think social media's played a big part of mental health, and that would be the case for a long, long time to come, I'm afraid.
Did you notice that with some of the people that you were help rehabilitating, was social media impacting them as well? Was that like
not so much back then, because I'm going back about 20 odd years ago, so we're going back a long way now, So it's not so much back then. I think it was more, culturally where they lived, it was more societal for them. They come from very broken families, very broken homes where parents were divorced, but not all of them. Some of them came from very wealthy families, really good families, but found themselves in this cycle of addictions of different sorts. I mean, I've been there myself. I was one, I fell away, I did it again. I've been backwards and forwards, and it pulls you back in, and I think everyone has an addiction to something.
Mm.
I mean, you walk around, you go in a cafe, everyone's addicted to their phones, right? Or coffee. No matter which one it is, not just Starbucks, there's others out there, by the way, isn't there?
Yeah.
Everyone's addicted to something. But I've become more reflective as I've got older. And even though I talk a lot, I'm very kind of quiet in my own time. I'm very private, small circle. And it helps my kind of, my soul, my calmness. I can just relax and breathe. Stop all
Mm.
the noise, the media, the news bites, the headlines. And I can dip back into it and then come back out of it. I mean, going from nature, I mean, it's all around us. We're trying
Yeah.
to destroy it, by the way, right now. We've got a lot going on that's trying to destroy that, because there's healing in that as well. And I've found that in the last few years, mostly, I've really, I think it's an age thing as well. And my walk where I'm currently journeying with is I'm finding that there is solace there, there is peace there, there is tranquility to be found, but it's not in politics. The
Mm.
answer is not in politics, and I think more and more people are understanding that politicians and politics in itself, our institutions, the norms, the institutes, they're not going to fix what we need.
Yeah.
They can pass as much legislation as they want. They can put as many papers through Parliament. They can throw money at the NHS. They can throw money at all the education. They can throw, which they do anyway, and it gets wasted. That's why we need Georgia in the UK, by the way. I dropped that in. But I just think people are just fed up. And there was actually a survey done. I'm not sure who the survey was done. I'll have to get it for you. But it was done by a group that looked at young people from the age of 18 to 24 who are now becoming more spiritually awake, if you like, and
Okay.
turning away from politics because they're not seeing politics as the answer.
Right.
For whatever they're searching for, that is, it's not a cop out. That's what they're looking. They're looking for something that gives them meaning and purpose and drive and everything else. And so they've been put off politics. So I think one of the reasons why we launched the Land of Saints and Sinners, sorry, that is a plug there, our podcast.
No, go for it. Go for it.
Yeah, it's for the reason we wanted to try and talk about spiritual stuff as well as political stuff, because I think the two are quite paralleled when you
Right.
consider what's going on in the world. We always pigeonhole Islam as a kind of evil kind of religion, but there are, of course, good Muslims out there. Of course there are. We understand that. And it's the same in all religions. Let's be quite frank about it. But I think the explosion of immigration into our country has amplified the kind of distaste people have for Islam, if you like, and the way that they've conducted themselves in certain parts of the cities around the country and in towns and villages around the UK. And of course, when things are exposed, like the grooming gangs, which is a massive
Yep.
thing, and Labour go, let's brush it under the carpet. I mean, people get really angry. I mean, they're pissed about it. Am I allowed to say that on the show?
Yeah. Yeah. You're allowed to. You're allowed
Well,
to.
I have to check in because we're not on GB News and we're Talk TV, so we're off.
Right.
It's before 9. No, I don't know how many time it is. So I think it's really it's concerning, and I just think that people are waking up to the idea that maybe politics is not the answer. But then on the flip side, as well as the spiritual, people are looking at reform. They are the go-to party for people now who have given up on politics altogether. They're
Yeah.
the silent majority, if you like. Their numbers are rising. And effectively, I can see them making some real serious inroads, not just in the elections coming up in May and local council elections. We don't have them here in Wales in May, but across the other parts of the country you do. Some have been cancelled, which is undemocratic.
Yeah.
I do think they're going to make some big swings and inroads. My concern is that the right side of politics is splintering.
Yeah.
You've got all kinds of different parties, the SDPs, you've got I can't think of all the names of the parties. I mean, people don't remember. We've got so many different parties out there, and I think the Integrity Party is a new one. I just bounced on social media this week. I noticed. I think people are kind of thinking, why are the right divided? If we came together, there
Yeah.
may be a possibility we could win our country back. But I think this is my personal take. No offense intended to anyone. I think leaders have too much of a big ego, and the ego
Mm.
gets in the way. And as a result of that, they're like, well, I want to be, the king of the castle. So unless it's my way, it's the highway. And I've been in some of those meetings in London and seen it happen. So for me, I kind of pulled away from all that then. And whilst I still put my voice in there and say political things, I'm kind of gauging on the spiritual as well, because we're living in very, very dangerous times. I mean, we all know that.
Mm.
Times that I find that it's almost a spiritual thing as well. There's something going on that's more than just politics. There's good and evil in the world, and we need to recognize that.
How did you get started in politics? We also know you're MP for the Brexit party. What made you throw your hat in the ring, let's say, and really go for it? And how was that journey like?
Um, I think it was when Nigel Farage visited Wales on a couple of occasions that he did. I was very impressed with what he had to say. He talked about family, values and culture, our history, and how it had been eroded, if you like, by what we some now would call an invasion of our country. I mean, it's not a question of our country not being compassionate. We just don't have the capacity. It's just simple as that. So it's not about, we don't care for people, genuine refugees, genuine asylum seekers. It's the fact that we don't have enough housing. There's not enough places, in our hospitals, our public services are stretched, our education schools. And when they're sometimes put in front of the queue, in front of our own citizens, I mean, the rage within people, and I think Nigel was touching on the things that people got angry about. And I was angry about those issues, right? So I was like, you know what? This guy is speaking the kind of things that I believe in. And then I kind of joined as a member of the party, as it was then formerly known as the Brexit Party, went to London to a number of conferences, got to meet with them personally. Nigel came to Ebervale to campaign with me, one-on-one. We were knocking doors together, went to the rugby club to watch a game of rugby. Had a couple of boos on one side and a couple of cheers on the other side. Swansea were playing Ebervale, and a couple of pints afterwards and stuff. And I liked what they stood for. I got what reform stood for at a Brexit party. Sorry, then. And then the opportunity came to stand as an MP. I spoke with the guys there, Richie, Tyson, others as well. With my background, of course, being an ex-criminal addict, they had to go through all the thorough checks as you do, and that was done. The vetting process was done correctly. We have a thing in this country called the Rehabilitation Act of 1975. So after 10 years, crime is spent, and I haven't committed a crime since I was 18. I'm now 50. So I was all right, right? But it was interesting when I stood to be an MP. The attacks that came on me from my past. But you did this and you did that, and I said, I was like, do you not believe in rehabilitation, that a person can change? Do we not live in a country where we give people a real chance? What does it say about your politics if you're attacking me standing as an MP? And it worked in my favour, because when I was knocking doors in Blind Eye Gwent, people were saying to me, we've heard your story, we think it's amazing, and we're going to vote for you. I mean, they put me in an orange jumpsuit on social media, Twitter as it was known then, and maybe it was changed on, don't vote for this guy, he used to be a burglar, a criminal, all that kind of stuff.
I think that's
Yeah.
the really horrible thing of the left of today. The woke mob is, you talked about your religious journey, and I call them, they're basically a religion and a cult. But the big difference is compared to any religion, Christianity, Hinduism, whatever, is all religions have forgiveness. They don't seem to have any on their side. Their answer is just to cancel you. And that's the really scary thing of their cult and religion. Every other religion has forgiveness as part of the process, but with their one, there is none. It's just cancellation, which I think is really, really, really bad.
Yeah, it's like hope, not hate. I mean, they hate everybody. I mean, there's no hope in them at all. There is that part. And I think, when I was attacked, it was mainly by the left, actually, left-wing kind of people here, certainly in Wales. But they were like the people I was standing against, really, they were not doing it, but they were instigating it behind the scenes, obviously, because they couldn't be seen as candidates doing it. They were using others on social media, bots and all sorts of things to attack me. But you know what? If you're going to get involved in politics, you have to have thick skin and broad shoulders. That's one thing I have learned. And you've got to withstand a hell of a lot of things that are thrown at you. And not only that, you sacrifice, because, I put a lot of my own money into the campaign. My children, of course, in school, my children in school, when I stood to be a candidate for the Brexit Party, my kids were literally, they were a target in school. They're older now, but they've left school and working. But when they were in school, they were targeted,
Crazy.
by pupils, by teachers. I had to go
Crazy.
into the school. I had to go into the school and speak to them, saying, no, listen, this is not right. This is discrimination against my children. Because obviously the school he was in was very much left-wing Labour kind of left-leaning kind of school. So it does affect people, and anybody standing to be a candidate in local elections that are coming up in May now, and obviously we've got the Welsh elections, 2026 next year in May, and Scottish, and then the generation 2029. For anyone to stand, whether they make it or not, I take my hat off to them, because I know how much sacrifice you have to make to be able to stand up and doing it for the right reasons, not doing it for a good payday, because I could make more money doing other things than being an MP, to be quite frank with you. So, but it was just a case of I was doing it out of principles, out of things that I felt my conscience were right for our country. And I think people get into politics for all kinds of reasons, but that was certainly mine.
Well, seems good sort of reasons to go in, and I think the thing with the Brexit Party is I think what they did, you could argue without Brexit Party, any version of Brexit probably wouldn't have happened, even if it's not the one that most people would want. I think without the influence of Brexit Party, I'm not sure what happened afterwards, even if we ever would have left the EU in any way. So I think definitely deserve a lot of credit there. What's the situation for you now in terms of politics? Do you see yourself running in any of you mentioned all the elections? Are you interested in running in any of them?
I get asked that question a lot, to be honest. I'm kind of I've stayed away from it for a while and just been more of a political commentator, giving my views on different things, and appearing on different channels regularly. But I think looking at the state of play right now, I'm not sure it's something I would get involved with again. Would I support certain people and candidates who are friends of mine? Definitely. I think that's important if they stand on things that that are akin to my kind of way of thinking. Absolutely. I am non-partisan, so if there's an general election called tomorrow, I'd probably end up voting Reform because it's the best out of the bunch of the worst. Not
Right.
because I have every faith in Reform in everything that they do or say, but certainly they're the closest to where I stand on things. But
Right.
my disengagement from politics came from a dissatisfaction with what I was seeing happening, and that it's not really the answer. There are alternatives. I know we're built on a democracy, and that's how things work. Parliamentary procedure and everything else. I get that, but I'm more of I see myself as a freedom fighter, speaking out against things more than for things. But I'm for a lot of things. Freedom of
Yeah.
speech, for example, being a big one of them, which is being curtailed in this country, and cancel culture that we've seen so much of. Your right to have an opinion, your right to pray in your head outside an abortion clinic. You get arrested for praying in your head. I mean, what is that about? I mean, it's just crazy. People posting stuff on the internet and getting 2 years. Lucy Conley, perfect example. When you've got Hugh Edwards, who had images of children on his phone, it was a paedophile who gets a payoff from the BBC taxpayers' license fee, walks away scot-free and doesn't do no time for it. I mean, it's two-tier justice, two-tier policing that we've seen. And I don't think that politics in itself is enough. Now, I had this discussion with somebody, I think it was one of our podcasts, our second podcast, we've only done 3 the other day, and we talked about, will we see civil riots? And I'm not advocating violence. I need to put that as a caveat. I'm beginning to feel in the kind of air, if you like, of humanity, there is this sense that people are going to get so frustrated that they will take to the streets. And we were seeing precursors of that happening. It'll be
Yeah.
more than just protests. I mean, I've been to loads of protests. I mean, look, London, always in London, innit? Great. What about Wales? Don't forget us here in Wales, I led a couple of years outside the Senate on vaccine passports, but that's something for another time, and lockdowns. But, I think people are getting to the point, we're tribal by nature. So we
Yeah.
return to our roots. We're nationalistic. We really are. I'm a Welshman before I'm British, but I'm British, and I'm proud to be British. But I'm also really proud to be a Welshman, And I think people are going to get angry, and it's going to spill out onto the streets, and we're going to see civil riots. I really, really believe it's going to happen because the way the country's going now, and especially under Keir Starmer, because of what he is, I mean, his first 4-5 hours in office were a disaster.
Yep.
I mean, then weeks went by. We looked at the pensioners, the farmers, the national insurance contributions. I mean, attack after attack after attack. The climate change thing. There's this idea that no, I know it's a conspiracy theory, of our fields being sprayed with certain chemicals that kill off our crops and our animals, and there's bovia put into our cows, which is an additive, and all that. There's lots of stuff that people don't research and get to know about that will have an impact, and it looks like they want to get rid of our farming industry. So there'll be processed foods in our shops, so they control everything. Digital ID, I mentioned that. Biometrics, I mean, everything's going to be on your mobile phone. Mark my words, your bank, your passport, your credit card, and everything you buy and sell will be on your phone. And they'll be able to track and trace you wherever you go, wherever you are. And I think people are waking up to that and thinking, hang on a minute, we don't like this. This is
Yeah.
dangerous. It's a dangerous precedent. So I think people are going to fight back. You might have had people on talk about the great 2030 reset. Now, I'm not wearing a tinfoil hat here now, right, for your viewers, right? But you've got to look at what's going on. You can't bury your head in the sand and say, oh, well, we'll just vote for reform and hope that's the answer. No. No, that's blind leading the blind. You've got to look at the bigger picture. And I'm trying to do that and work out what that looks like for me. And once I find out, I'll tell everybody on my podcast what it is.
I think you said it there about conspiracy theories, but the thing is, I think it's almost unfair even to yourself or anyone else because so many conspiracy theories or theorists we heard in the last 3 or 4 years, they've literally all been proven to be true. The vaccines, the lockdowns, all this sort of stuff have all been proven. Even the fact that COVID came from a lab, all this sort of stuff. It was at one point racist to even suggest that could be a case. That the COVID came from, it was a lab, man-made virus, and all this stuff has literally been proven to be true. But even what I get worried about in the UK, and maybe you have different insights to me on this, is I'm still worried that so many people still are falling into that trap of believing whether it's Siki Starmer, previously Richie Sunak, whoever. People are still, from what I'm seeing a lot of people still falling into the trap of just believing what they see on BBC or what comes out of these guys' mouths and almost thinking that they're going to save them or some sort of thing. Is that similar to what you're seeing, or are you seeing more that more rebellious stuff coming through?
Yeah, I think people are starting to really they're having a great awakening. They're like, because and of course there are some who will just put the TV on, whatever they listen to. My dear old mum. I mean, she's an avid kind of soaps kind of person. She loves EastEnders and Coronation and Emmerdale Farm. It's one of those things, and I have to watch it with her, which is it's very interesting. And I think people just soak all this information in, and it has subliminally indoctrinated them. You talk about the BBC and Sly News, as I call them, and all these kind of mainstream MSM channels that push stuff out there, and people take it on face value. They don't look into it deeper. And I think what social media has allowed us to do, and platforms like yours and podcasts like yours and others that are out there, it gives an alternative voice and opinion to what we're hearing from mainstream media, the legacy media. Now, in America, which is interesting, really, Trump has made it very clear he does not want, because he doesn't like the legacy media, as you know, he can't stand them. He's opened up the doors to the press room White House to non-legacy media, to YouTubers, to podcasters. I mean, it's just incredible. You never thought I'd see that in my lifetime. Your Joe Rogans and others as well. And that's for a reason, because he wants to give a broad church to people to say, look, there are other views here. There are other ideas here. Don't believe everything you hear. I mean, the funniest thing I ever see on BBC is BBC Verify. I mean, it just really tickles me pink, because I found them the other week verifying something that they had said. They were verifying themselves. If you remember a documentary about a young boy going around Gaza and filming the state of it and what Israel was doing to Gaza, etc., etc. Turned out the young boy was the son of a Hamas leader. So the BBC apologized, said they didn't know. They pulled the program and sent out an apology. Now, that young boy's family were paid, apparently, but the BBC kind of said, well, we didn't produce it. It was produced by an independent filmmaker, by a film doc maker. So we're not we didn't really they didn't do their due diligence. And so, they lie. I mean, during COVID, when they were pushing every day, scaring people by saying 130,000 people have died of COVID, they weren't dying of COVID. They died with COVID. A lot of people that I spoke to, one of my friend's dad, actually, it's quite personal, he had a heart attack. He died from a heart attack. He had on his death certificate, it had cause of death, COVID. He didn't die from COVID. No, I know people with respiratory problems and elderly people. Of course, it's a cold, a nasty cold. That's what I seen it as. I never had the jab. I never had the call. I never had COVID. I've never had it. I mean, it's just maybe I've got a good Welsh immune system. I don't know what it is, but I just don't. I didn't believe in it. Interventions when you've got big pharmaceutical companies, when you've got Schwab's and you've got Bill Gates and all these people investing so much into it, and BlackRock and all these people, they're all part of one global thing. The WEF, the WHO, the UN, all of them. And I have no trust whatsoever in any of them. So I'm kind of trying to figure out, to be honest with you, how do I live off grid? I buy a tent somewhere and build underground and just get away from it all, and find real peace. But yeah, I'm kind of one of those that a lot of the conspiracy theorists that I was called that early on during COVID when I said the things I said. And I was cancelled of a lot of things as well. Seen as crazy. A lot of that's come to pass now. You're looking at the injuries that the jab has had on a lot of people.
Yeah.
We used to have a reporting card here in Wales. I think it was in the UK actually called the yellow card, where people could report, illnesses. The government wouldn't even look at it. Andrew Bridgen has done a lot on this, if you may know, campaigning very hard on this. And there's just it's just scandal after scandal, and this is from the top. This is why people don't trust the government. They don't trust politicians, and in particular right now, as I've mentioned once, and I'll probably mention it again and again, Keir Starmer is one of the worst. I mean, Boris was just bundling Boris.
Yeah.
He's a great campaigner, a great election winner, but he is useless at running the country. I mean, that's as simple as that. Losing a 80-seat majority tells you all you need to know about his leadership as PM. But I think people look for alternatives. So it's interesting, isn't it? So the conspiracy stuff, I've been doing some research recently into a lot of different things, and I'm finding things out that are really shocking me. I don't know if I can mention it on you. I don't know where you sit there, but I'm going to mention it anyway. So I was a skeptic on chemtrails, right? So
Okay.
we're going to go down this rabbit hole, but not for too long because I'm still new to it, right? So it's my girlfriend actually who's a believer in it, and I got speaking to her, and we were having this debate, and I was like, they're contrails, it's just condensation, it's just this, it's just that, they're releasing jet fuel, it's got too much fuel, and I started looking into it, and it became very clear to me, not just watching videos, because I get my information by reading. I can't cope with videos. Maybe I've got a bit of autism in me, but I cope with reading. And I read and I read and I read and I study and I study and I study both sides. And I kind of argue with the both, as they taught me in university. And I'm starting to come to the conclusion that there is a plan going on, that there is this plan for depopulation, that they are poisoning our crops and in effect our livestock, our animals, what they're eating, the seeds are in the ground, and they're controlling the weather. Because the sun reflects and they're putting metals in the air. And I've looked at this and, there's enough evidence out there, but the government don't want to talk about it. But mark my words, within the next few years, like COVID, like the jab in the lab, all of this is going to come out. I was a non-believer in this, right? So I was literally like, you're all nuts. You're tin foil hat wearing mad crazy people.
With everything that's happened, like I don't think anyone can even assume that. Like from what happened in the last 5 years, the amount of times we were literally told on TV lies every single day. I think it's good to question these things. I think climate change in general is one of those things that the moment you say something like, I don't think net zero is a good idea. I don't think that we should make people knowingly poorer, that we know we're going to make them poorer by doing this on science that we don't actually have the full data on. I think that's really, really a really bad thing to do. And I think it's quite a selfish thing to do. And it does. I really do want to touch on what you said earlier about talking about good and evil, because some of the stuff that's going on, it's hard not to think that there are some really evil, twisted people out there that are doing this, because some of it just really doesn't add up in terms of what's going on in the UK. Where you mentioned that earlier. What did you kind of mean by that? Are you seeing similar things where you're seeing almost deliberate evil? And interesting how you talked about human life. I've definitely felt for a long time in the West in general, there is this kind of like not valuing human life anymore. And it seems to be a reoccurring thing that I just keep thinking about. You can see it with the way people, like the way mothers are attacked for wanting to have children and all this sort of stuff. It just seems there is this kind of anti-human agenda almost going on. And what did you mean by sort of the evil, bad stuff?
I believe in the sanctity of human life. I believe all life is sacred, in regards to the color of your skin or wherever you're from around the world. I mean, we're all we're all created in the image of God. That's my base where I start from, and I believe in good and evil. Now, what that will look different for different people. I think that comes down to the spiritual, which I've talked about, and I'm afraid to talk about that. I am a believer. I have faith. I'm a Christian. I attend church. I don't Bible bash people. I don't go around proselyting everyone. It's not my kind of scene. But suffice to say, people who would ask me questions like you have about good and evil, I'll tell you how I see it. We have, in the context of Scripture, the word, and it talks about the end times. It's in the book of Revelation, chapter 13, talks about the mark of the beast. People won't be able to buy or sell without this mark. We're seeing it through what's happening right now, with digital ID and, having a passport for this and that, so they can integrate, find out where you are, what you're up to, what you're doing. But I think if good men fail to speak out when evil is happening, then evil will prevail. And I think it's more spiritual, and I think it does come from religion.
No, I definitely understand. I think the reality is when you have the amount of numbers that are in this country right now coming on a daily basis, that means a lot of groups of people, they don't need to adapt to the UK Western way of living. I think if you look back in the 60s, 70s, 80s, when my sort of parents came, it was around 10,000 was net migration. So whether you like it or not, you're forced to adapt to this country. And I'd argue those people who came those times came to the UK because they wanted to live the UK lifestyle. They didn't want to change it. They were in not such good
Yeah.
positions. So they came and they're like, well, we actually want our kids to speak English. We want them to take on British attitudes, take on British values. Okay, we can do our own stuff at home, whatever, but you're raising here to better your life. I don't think the people who are coming in now or the last 10, 15 years are thinking the same. And I think because the numbers are so high and they're so drastic, they don't need to adapt. They can have their own parts of England. Why do they need to learn English? Why do they need to understand about the different religions and go to whatever? Like, I don't think they need to. And I think the UK has done a really, really terrible job at protecting its history. Instead, it just constantly gets bashed 24/7. And I think we've just fallen into such a weird way where we don't want to defend the Christian Judo values, those kind of values that the West and Britain's been a part of. So now it's at a point where I think it's really, really difficult to say anything because you will get tarnished Islamophobic, you will get tarnished racist, even probably more so for you. And so like it's I think it's really hard for a lot of people to speak up about it. But there is a serious problem in terms of the fabric of the country right now, what's going on. And I think a lot of people are scared, worried, and I don't think they see Britain as Britain anymore, which I think is really, really scary.
Yeah, and I think speaking for your family and your generation, it must be difficult for them because, there's a sense of, well, we came over here, you go back to the 60s and 70s, and it was like the Unrest generation, for example. I mean, they contributed so much, and multicultural enriched our country at that time. It was an enriching thing,
Yeah.
but it's kind of flipped the other way now. And, it's sad really because generations like your family would look at that and think, I hope they don't think that of us,
No,
and
I
not
think
that
they
not that they
no.
do, but it's like I'm all about the public perception,
Yeah.
the people's opinion, and I'm like that's not how it is, and I think so to try and kind of interpret that to get people to understand. No, you don't understand. We're not all like this, we you know what I mean? Like your good self. I mean, you're the same as me. We hold probably similar opinions and views on
Yeah.
things. Like you mentioned immigration. But there's this sense of coming over, and it's almost like an invasion. I mean, it's
Yeah.
been coined as an invasion, hasn't it, of our country? I mean, we can't stop the boats, and Keir Starmer can't smash the guns. He can't lie down straight. Never mind lie. He can't smash an egg. He can't stop the boats. I remember saying stop the benefits and you'll stop the boats. Simple job done. But that's too simple for them. I know we're in the ECHR. We need to come out of it, etc. There's human rights and stuff there, but you're right. We have generations that have, contributed to our country and validly so. But what we're seeing now is very different, isn't it?
Yeah. And I would actually say even worse. So I think those people you speak to, my parents, those profiles, they are more angry than ever with what's going on now because for them it was they came to this country to better themselves. That was the reason they came to United Kingdom to better themselves, and now they feel more angry and more passionate. I think it's one of the reasons I speak about it so much on TV and stuff because I think maybe because I realize that if my parents didn't come to the UK when they did, my life would have been 500 times worse than what it is. I would not have had any of the opportunities I have now. So now when I see all those values, the merits, all that meritocracy, DEI, all this sort of stuff coming in, I'm like, this is absolutely crazy, because like I think I feel like if I'm so lucky to have been born in the UK, and now I'm seeing people just destroying it, and it makes you so angry, because you're like, wow, like you're actually destroying the fabric of our own country, and you're doing it in such a it's in such a quick way. That's, I think, the really scary thing for me now. I'm really worried that they're gonna not push it to a point of no recovery, but it's just going to like be a really, really bad long period, and it's going to take a long while to fix. That's my concern. I'm really optimistic with how quick Trump's made all these quick changes, and that fills me with optimism that maybe something similar here could happen. But I don't know if you're a bit more optimistic than I am in terms of the UK.
Yeah, well, I think listening to you, it gives me kind of sense of actually, you've got gratitude. You've got gratitude for your parents, what they did, and it's different to what we're seeing now. We're seeing people who believe they have an entitlement. We have a right to do this and a right to do that. Whereas, I'm grateful for our country. I'm grateful for our forefathers who fought in the First, Second World War, obviously, but wars prior to that to keep our democracy alive and gave their lives for it. And we see cancel culture. I noticed there was a press release a couple of weeks ago in the news story. A council refused to back a veterans celebration day because they were afraid it would be, against certain ethnic minorities. I mean, it's just like these people who served in our wars, and died and gave their lives for us, and we're dishonoring them in this way. And I think there's a sensitivity. It's the PC world, isn't it? Political correctness. We need to move away from that and just be grown-ups in the room and say it as it is, without the fear of, being cancelled, without the fear of being, labelled a fascist, a racist, a this or that, and all these labels. Rip all the labels off, call it out for what it is.
Yep.
And I think that's good, because in all religions, I mean, I've met some wonderful Hindus, wonderful Sikhs, and wonderful Muslims. They're just people. But predominantly what we're seeing is an invasion of a culture that is alien to ours, that is breaking up the fabric of our society and indoctrinating our way of living, if you like, and trying to rewrite history. It's almost like we have to apologize, to people about our past. I mean, reparations, we weren't even there. I wasn't even born. I know I'm 50. I'm not that old. And I just think, being grateful that we do live in a country where there is, well, some kind of democracy. I don't know what it looks like at the moment. It's a bit frayed at the edges, should we say. But, it's gratitude, because there are countries I could go to where I would be persecuted, for my faith and my belief. I get that. And I think we have been taken for granted for far too long, because an old friend of mine used to say, what happens is, for something to become normal, people hear it enough times, they tolerate it. Once they tolerate it, then they normalize it, then they accept it. It's that process. Tolerate it, normalize, then you embrace it, and then it becomes the norm. I mean, it's literally, you tolerate it, and then you accept it. It becomes the norm. But they're not norms. We need to really dig deeper into that and say, well, this isn't right. That we have separate courts in this country, and there are religious guys that are saying things. Religion, and a lot of people say that the religion is the cause of most wars. I think it's the evil that's in men's and women's hearts that is the cause of most of the wars in our country. And they talk about putting knives down, taking knives off people's hands. Well, if you've got murder in your heart, you'll find another object. It's not knives that are a problem. It's what's in people's hearts that are a problem. And I think that's where we've got to reach deep down into. And if there's a way we can do that through showing them love, grace, and rehabilitation, and help and support, and not prevent program, because they're rubbish, by the way, then we can maybe steer them into a better path of life and a better way of living.
So what's with the work you're doing now? So Land of Sinners, that's the podcast. What's the idea with that podcast? Is it to talk about stuff like this and try and offer solutions?
Yeah, it's called The Land of Saints and Sinners. We've literally launched it we did about 2 weeks ago, so we're brand new. We're on TikTok, we're on YouTube, and we're on X as well. I'll send you across if people want to follow us now, we'd appreciate it. It's really small for me. And the idea is that we're having conversations with people from all walks of life. So it's not just me speaking. We've got co-hosts on there. One's called Clark, who is a business guy who is a regional business guy for a number of different things around the country. We've got Jojo Meadows, who's kind of a counsellor trained in the medical profession, you know, to lecture on medicines and the pharmaceuticals and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
She's been through a lot of personal experiences herself as a single parent. We cover a whole spectrum of things. I'm just a gobby Welshman, you know, who goes off on a rant, you know. But we cover a lot of things. But we're due to do some filming actually with some farmers in the next few weeks, looking at, you know, the kind of food they're putting into their cows, etc. There's a lot of stuff going on with that, which I can't say too much at the moment. But
Okay.
so it's a bit of, you know, journalistic investigation we're doing, finding new stories and having guests on the top of their experiences and trying to offer support and help where we can and giving people a voice who don't have a voice. You know, I might have a good platform on X, you know, but in other areas, other people got good platforms. And so we shared, it's a combined effort to bring people together because, you know, it takes a village to raise, you know, it takes a community and a village to raise a child. And I
Yeah.
think this whole idea of division, we're trying to bring people together and you know, in a sense, and trying to make sense of the madness that's going on in the world. Now, that's the slogan for our show. Trying to make sense of the madness that's going on in the world. How does that sound?
Yeah, that's. I mean, it's probably going to be a hard job to do, especially with what Keir Starmer is doing at the moment. And I mean, how does it feel in Wales in particular with everything that's going on in the UK? What's like the sentiment, the mood? You know, in England, I don't think Welsh news is really covered in great detail, but like, what's the general sentiment in Wales of what's happening across the UK?
Well, let's turn the clocks back to July, the general election. There isn't a single Conservative MP in Wales at all,
Mm,
not one. Now that tells you all you need to know because people got so fed up with 14 years of Tory kind of rule here in Westminster, but here in Wales as well. Of course, with Wales and Scotland, Northern Ireland, we have devolution. So we have 22 devolved powers to a Welsh Parliament. It used to be called the Welsh Assembly. Then they became a Parliament. That's another time as well. And then they, of course, have a First Minister, which is like equivalent to our PM, I suppose, in Westminster. We have the Speaker of the House, which is the Llywelyn, or it's the Welsh word for her. So it's a government intended within itself. And we receive money from Westminster every year under the Barnett formula that gives us X amount of billions to run the country of Wales. And there's never enough money. They always moan about it. But Labour have been in power since devolution began. So 2 decades, no other party has been in power in Wales except Labour. Now, of course, Westminster, we've had it's either the Cons or
right.
or Labour, right? So we've had no alternatives. Labour have at some points been in coalition with Plaid Cymru, which are Welsh nationalists who believe in Welsh independence, which would bankrupt our country, by the way, which is just an economical, fiscal disaster. But we've never known anything else. But when you look at what's happening in Wales, the levels of deprivation, the lack of public services, access to the NHS, waiting times in hospitals, they're way, way, way higher than anywhere in England. I mean, you just go on the internet and have a look, it's all there. You can get the stats, freedom of information, they're there. And what Welsh Labour used to do was always blame Westminster because the Conservatives were in power. Oh, well, it's not our fault, it's Westminster's fault. Well, they
Right.
can't do that now because Labour are in charge in Westminster. And already we're seeing a kind of debates going on between Westminster and Eluned Morgan, who's currently the First Minister of Welsh Labour here, who runs the Welsh government in that sense. And there's conflict happening because obviously they're saying, well, Labour are in charge. We can't blame them anymore because they're our buddies over on the other side of the M4.
Yeah.
So I think that what we're seeing politically in Wales at the last election that we had, a general election in July, Reform had a massive surge here in Wales. They came second in so many constituencies, even though boundaries had changed. And here in Llanelli, which is where I'm living with my mum at the moment, Gareth Beer, who was the Reform candidate here, I mean, he came second, and he weren't a million miles away. I mean, and that was an election that was called in a very short space of time. So you imagine if they had the groundswell of support building up to a general election, having all of that momentum behind what they have now, potentially could have won the seat and taken it off the current Labour, the Labour MP. Yes, MP is Neil Griffiths. The MS for the Welsh Parliament, Welsh government is Lee Waters here in Llanelli. Got to get that right. It's two different MPs and MSs, right? They're different. And so I think next year in May 2026, when we have the Welsh elections, I predict that Reform will win a large amount of seats. It'll go one of two ways. Either Labour and Plaid will come into a coalition together again, because currently Welsh Labour don't have majority in Senate. So when they're putting bills through, they need either Plaid Cymru or the one single Liberal Democrat that they have called Jane Dodds, who got in on PR, the only person there, who's the leader of the Welsh Liberal Democrats here in Wales. I mean, she is able to like barter with them and say, well, I'll vote with you on this if you do this for me, so it's kind of, payoffs, that kind of thing. But I think Reform will win a lot of seats, and I think the way the Welsh Conservatives are handling things, and I've got friends in well, they might not be friends anymore after me saying this. Friends in the Welsh Conservative Party, I think they're going to lose they're going to lose their seats. They are going to lose their seats without a shadow of a doubt. Now, I worked in the Welsh Parliament, so I worked for Mark Reckless, who was a Brexit Party MS a few years ago, and you get to see behind the scenes, with all the kind of backroom stuff that goes on. It's quite interesting, actually, how people talk in cafes about what they're going to do and all that kind of stuff. And they just didn't like me. I mean, I was walking around suited and booted. This is not my kind of traditional thing, wearing suits, but because I was quite vocal about stuff. And I got to see the inside of the belly of the beast here in Wales, and it wasn't a pretty thing to see, if I'm honest with you. But I think Wales needs change. If Reform is the answer, then if it is the answer, then I'd support it. But I'm not entirely convinced. But there's no alternatives. Where else do you vote for? Who do you vote for? And I'm a firm believer, if people died gives the right to vote, we should vote. But is abstinence, is abstaining a vote in itself? I mean, it's a big question, isn't it?
Oh, interesting times. It's been amazing to chat to you, Richie, and hopefully we can do this again soon. We have like a closing tradition on this show where I essentially ask the guest, what is an unpopular opinion that you have that you think should be popular? So it can be anything. It could be some of the stuff we discussed. It could be completely unrelated, but an unpopular opinion that you have that you think should be popular.
Oh, no, that is you should have asked me this so I could have had time to think about it. That's the plan, is it? Unpopular opinion. My unpopular opinion is that Wales is the best place to live on earth, right? And it's God's country. So I'm going to leave. That's not political. I believe that the Welsh. The Welsh are the best singers that there are.
Okay.
We're the best singers, right? To put it that, and you can put your money on that. Just ask Tom Jones, right? Oh yeah.
Fair enough. Well, great to have you, Richie. Thank you. And we'll definitely speak soon.
Thank you, man.